So let's continue our discussion on absolute value in terms of elevation and temperature. So for number one, a part of the city of New Orleans is 6 feet below sea level. So we can use -6 feet, because once again, sea level is at 0 feet. So -6 is 6 feet below sea level to describe its elevation. And the absolute value of -6 feet, once again, is what is the distance of -6 from sea level to describe its vertical distance. In the context of elevation, what would each of the following numbers describe? So here we just have 25 feet. So it's positive. So that would mean 25 feet above sea level. And once again, sea level is 0 feet elevation, just to help kind of orient ourselves here. Okay, so then this, the absolute value of 25 feet is literally means what is the distance of 25 feet from sea level. So now -8 feet would be 8 feet below sea level, because it's negative. But now if we had the absolute value of -8 feet would be what is the distance. So once again, absolute value is always kind of in the form of like this question of what is the distance of -8 feet from sea level. And so what is the distance of -8 feet from sea level? It's 8 feet from sea level. It's below it, but it's just, whether it's above or below, it's just always going to be 8 feet from sea level. So the elevation of a city is different from sea level by 10 feet. Name the two elevations that the city could have. So if that's all I was told is that something is 10 feet from sea level, well, it could be above sea level or it could be below sea level. It doesn't specify. It just says that it's 10 feet away from it. So it could be -10 is 10 feet from sea level, or +10. Both have a distance of 10 from 0. So now that's our discussion on elevation. So now we're going to be talking about temperature again. So we write -5 degrees Celsius to describe a temperature that is 5 degrees Celsius below freezing point, and 5 degrees Celsius for a temperature that is 5 degrees above freezing. So once again, positive is above freezing, negative is below freezing. So in this context, what do each of the following numbers describe? So 1 degree Celsius literally means 1 degree above freezing. -4, so it's negative, so that is 4 degrees below freezing. Because it's negative, so it's below, and positive is above. So now, here we have absolute value of 12. So, how many degrees away from freezing point is 12? And how many degrees away from freezing point is 12 degrees? It's 12 degrees away. And -7 is how many degrees below freezing is -7? it is 7 degrees below. So once again, when we write absolute value is asking it's always just about the distance from 0. So when you talk about distance from 0, that the answer is always going to be positive. So this is 7 degrees below 0, but how far away from 0 is that? 7 degrees away from 0. So which temperature is colder, -6 or 3? Well, if it's 6 degrees below freezing, that's definitely colder. Negative temperatures are always colder. Now, which temperature is closer to freezing temperature or has a smaller absolute value? So, -6 degrees Celsius, the absolute value, what is the distance of -6 degrees from 0? Is 6 degrees from freezing. What is the distance of 3 degrees from freezing? Is 3 degrees from freezing. So which one is closer to freezing point? 3 degrees is closer to freezing point. It's only 3 degrees away from 0, and -6 is 6 degrees from 0. So 3 degrees would actually be closer, meaning it has a smaller absolute value. So now let's flip over to our lesson summary. So once again, we compare numbers by comparing their positions on the number line. The one farther to the right is greater, the one farther to the left is less. That's always important to note. However, sometimes we're not talking about which one is greater or which one is less. Sometimes we're just talking about which one is closer to 0. That's where absolute value comes in. So once again, absolute value of a number tells us the distance from 0. So that's going to be our key takeaway from today. Okay? And thinking about this last problem, looking at our big ideas, we should copy down absolute value is a number's distance from 0. And so the absolute value of 8 is saying how far away from 0 is -8. It is 8 units away from 0. And so, and we should also add a smaller absolute value based on that last question from the previous page. A smaller absolute value means that number is closer to 0. If we think about what that means, so once again, if we look back at this last problem, right, so we know -6 degrees is colder, right? It's less than, it's negative. However, which one has a smaller absolute value? Even though this is warmer, it's greater than -6, its absolute value is smaller. Because a smaller absolute value just means, that it is closer to 0. So even though this is warmer, its absolute value is smaller because it's closer to 0.